Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. So, Tesla just filed a new Form 8K, and in it have outlined the details of a new 2025 CEO Interim Award for Elon. Now, before I jump into this, just know if Elon ends up winning his appeal to the Delaware Supreme Court and he actually gets his 2018 compensation plan, this new 2025 plan would be effectively rendered moot and would be forfeit entirely. Tesla also shared a post on X going over some of the details from the 8K, but they also said the special committee continues to work to address a longer-term CEO compensation strategy, which we plan to put to a shareholder vote at the November 6th annual meeting. And they said Tesla did indeed review everyone's letters that were sent in. They read our X posts and considered direct feedback. And you may recall earlier this year, Tesla's board formed this special committee of independent directors, and the two members were Robin Denholm and Kathleen Wilson Thompson. This special committee was tasked with figuring out something for Elon, given the fact that his 2018 comp package is stuck in limbo thanks to the Delaware courts. So this award announced today is just an interim step to bridge the gap, if you will, to compensate Elon while the court case continues. That court case probably won't come to its conclusion until the end of this year. So this award today grants Elon 96 million restricted shares, which is roughly 1/3 of the size of his 2018 pay plan. And restricted stock just means they have limitations on when the shares can be sold, transferred, or fully owned. And in this case, this award is basically a hybrid between traditional restricted stock and stock options. These shares would fully vest in 2 years as long as Elon stays in an eligible role. Elon would be required to pay about $23 per share when the shares vest, which is the same price as Elon's 2018 exercise price. And that would work out to roughly $2.2 billion that Elon would have to pay for these shares if they do indeed vest. Elon cannot sell or transfer these shares until August of 2030, except to pay taxes. And again, don't forget, if Elon gets his 2018 pay package, this new award will be forfeited entirely. Elon can actually pledge these shares, which means he can use them as collateral, but only to cover the purchase price and taxes. And the 8K made it clear Elon would have to buy these shares in 2 years, and that would be mandatory, not optional, if the shares vest, which is when Elon would have to buy them at that discounted price. And this plan was actually approved under the existing 2019 equity incentive plan, so this does not require another shareholder vote. I did want to call out, just be very careful with what you're reading on X about this. I've already seen plenty of things that are incorrect and leave out important nuance and context, which is the risk you run when you try to get your take or your analysis out there as soon as possible. There seems to be plenty of confusion about when these shares will actually give Elon more voting power, and the answer to that depends on something called the HSR, the Hart-Scott-Rodino Act clearance. That's because of the size of this award, but all you need to know is the timeline can vary and can be shortened or delayed depending on various factors. But the following is the most likely outcome. Step 1 is the grant date for these shares, which has already occurred. Technically, that was yesterday, August 3rd. The grant date is just when the promise is made, aka when Tesla shares this filing. Granting is just administrative. So as of now, no shares have been issued and Elon has no extra voting power. Next up, the HSR filing will likely happen this week. Then there's usually a 30-day waiting period, after which the shares would be issued to Elon, and the expectation is at that point, immediately upon issuance, Elon would get full voting rights on all 96 million shares. That could happen by early September, and that would give Elon more voting control, even though they would still be restricted shares. This would take Elon's voting power from about 12.7% now to 15.7%. And it's also at the time of issuance, which is likely to be early September, when the shares are usually added to Tesla's outstanding share count. meaning that is when dilution could happen, but you need more context for that. That's because when the shares are issued, they're legally created and delivered to Elon, even though they're restricted and unvested. That's thanks to accounting standard ASC 260 that treats unvested restricted stock awards as outstanding if they carry voting rights, which these do. But another important distinction, we need to differentiate between float and outstanding shares. The public float, which is the freely tradable share count, will likely exclude these new shares until they become unrestricted. And that would likely be after vesting and after the 5-year holding period, since they're insider held and restricted. But the dilution can impact outstanding shares, and that's what most EPS calculations use. So for Tesla EPS adjustments thanks to dilution, that would likely happen at the time of issuance, which again could be early September for the diluted EPS calculations. But the basic EPS calculations would likely be unchanged until the shares vest in 2 years. And if this new award forfeits altogether because Elon gets his 2018 plan, then the shares just return to Tesla, reversing any dilution impact. Now, at this point, I know this can be a lot and somewhat hard to understand, so I want to try to make sure everybody grasps these concepts. Yes, Elon will get full voting rights on the 96 million shares, which is expected to happen sometime in early September, which will be well before Elon ever pays for the shares, which wouldn't happen until August 2027. If he does at all. So if you see people calculating Elon's voting increase from this new plan after having to sell shares for taxes, that is incorrect. That's because Elon wouldn't have to sell any of these shares for taxes until the time of vesting, which is 2 years from now. So Elon will have full voting rights well before he has to buy these shares and deal with any tax implications. So Elon would technically own the shares upon issuance sometime early September, which is when he holds the title to the shares with the voting rights and with exposure to any value changes. But he's still subject to those restrictions, meaning he cannot sell or transfer. And then upon vesting in 2 years, that's when he would have to pay for them and deal with taxes. And to be clear, this is not an incentive-based performance award. There are no new milestones for Elon to achieve with this. As Tesla said separately, there will be an entirely new pay package with new incentives that will be introduced later this year that we will be voting on at the November 6th meeting. Now, the goal with this interim incentive is, of course, to keep Elon happy and engaged and motivated without duplicating any pay that Elon may still get from his 2018 pay plan. From Elon's viewpoint, this gives him the ability to pay that $2.2 billion and end up with about $30 billion in Tesla stock at today's prices. But obviously, the true value of this award is unknown because it depends what Tesla's stock price is closer to the time when these shares would vest, because that is when Elon will actually pay to own the shares, and the tax implications will be based on the difference between that $23 that he'll pay and the fair market value for Tesla stock at that time. But if you run calculations based on today's prices, Elon might have to sell around 36 million shares to pay for the taxes he would owe, which means the tax bill could be in excess of $11 billion. But again, these are just guesses because the actual tax bill depends on Tesla stock price around the time of vesting. The taxable income would be the market value of the shares at the time of vesting minus the amount paid for them, which in this case is that $23 per share. Now, I also think it's important to note Tesla will not immediately record any of this as an expense. That's because in the 8K Tesla calls out, the vesting is seen as not probable due to the ongoing lawsuit. Tesla said it would reassess this likelihood quarterly, and if it does ever become likely to vest, then Tesla will likely record expenses at that time in the future. So if and when that were to happen, it would reduce Tesla's reported earnings, but it would likely be backed out by most competent analysts. And this $23.7 billion hypothetical accounting cost in the 8K is just that, a hypothetical accounting cost of this award to Tesla. But this was for illustrative purposes only, as again, the actual cost will change given the market prices for Tesla stock in the future. And the actual expense recognition for Tesla depends on when and if the vesting becomes probable, not directly when the shares vest or even when Elon pays for the shares. And that is thanks to the accounting standard ASC 718. So for now, Tesla deems the vesting not probable, so no expense yet. But then if vesting becomes probable before the vesting date of August 3rd, 2027, Tesla would record what's called a catch-up expense. So let's say this were to happen 1 year from now. That would be 50% of the cost recognized immediately at that time, and then the rest would be expensed over the remaining period. But if the vesting never becomes probable, there would be no expense for Tesla. So obviously if there's no vesting, there would be no expense. But if somehow the vesting does occur even though it never became probable before that, then Tesla would recognize the full compensation expense all at once upon vesting. But if this award were to vest, then Tesla's special committee would likely understand that that was going to happen, meaning part of the expense recognition would occur before vesting and then the rest later. But truthfully, I'm still hoping Elon wins the appeal for his 2018 pay package and he ends up getting that whole thing in its entirety, and then all of this becomes irrelevant. But for now, this should definitely help incentivize Elon a bit for the next 6 months while we await that verdict, because again, Elon hasn't really been paid before this since 2017, and he's grown Tesla's market cap by about $750 billion during that time. This would be a dilutive event, as 96 million new shares is roughly 3% of the total shares outstanding, and that count right now is about 3.2 billion. But as we covered earlier, that dilution would not be immediate, and there's a lot more nuance behind how that would work. And not to read too far into this, but Tesla saying the interim award will not be deemed to be probable of being met in the 8K does to me imply that right now Tesla expects a court ruling on the 2018 pay package before August 2027, and one that does let Elon fully exercise his 2018 pay plan, which would trigger that early forfeiture of this new interim award, rendering it moot. In other terms, Tesla might be optimistic right now that Elon could win the appeal at the Delaware Supreme Court. That's because if Tesla was expecting to lose that appeal, then the chances of this new award actually vesting would likely be a lot more probable. Now, of course, there are no guarantees here, and Tesla said it'll monitor that situation quarterly, but I think that's noteworthy to point out. So overall, Elon gets more voting power soon, potentially in the next 30 days, which will be well before the annual shareholder meeting this year on November 6th. Elon does not owe anything now. He doesn't have to deal with any tax implications for this for at least 2 years. And there's nothing for Tesla expense for now. And one last time, all of this would be moot if Elon and Tesla win the 2018 appeal at the Delaware Supreme Court. But even if Elon were to lose that, this way, Elon gets paid something for the past 7 years, and it helps keep him invested in Tesla since he can't sell these shares until 2030. And if Elon ends up buying these shares in 2 years, he would be paying that roughly $2.2 billion to Tesla, which would be a nice cash infusion for the company. So I think this is a pretty brilliant move by the special committee. It's a great way to bridge the gap without triggering financial implications for Elon or Tesla, and it guarantees Elon will have something locked in even if the 2018 pay plan appeal goes south. And let this all be your motivation to make sure that you'll be able to vote your Tesla shares at this shareholder meeting in November, because it's going to be a big one. A vote on Tesla investing in XAI, and a vote on a new pay package for Elon with new incentives that will likely cover the next 5 to 10 year period for Tesla. It's looking like those two will absolutely be things we're voting on, and you'll want to be prepared and informed before then. Now, remember last week I mentioned Trump firing someone from the Bureau of Labor Statistics? Well, I know many of you have minimal interest in economic happenings, but it's just a fact the macro picture drives the stock market first and foremost. And the good news is we have tools that can help us stay up to date quickly. Right here, we have data aggregated from 652 different sources, all talking about this one story. And right here, you can get a bullet point summary of all of the key points for all of the articles that lean left politically, those in the center, and those that lean right. And further, you can get an instant comparison of the bias that each side is showing. Left-leaning outlets are using words like meltdown and grim, and right-leaning sources are talking about a Biden holdover and faked job numbers, which very quickly helps me to cut through any propaganda from either side. But a key point here, most macroeconomic specialists would tell you the monthly employment report is the most influential data point for stock market movements in the short term. That's because it's a needle mover for Fed rate decisions, economic growth estimates, and really just overall sentiment. And Ground News, the sponsor of this video, can fill you in on all of the breaking news that's key not just to our markets, but to those around the world. And the political bias ratings on Ground News are based on ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. And here's my own custom list where I'm tracking AI, Elon, Tesla, business, tech, and a few others. And of course, you can customize your own. There are dashboards that show you your consumption habits across different time frames, and overall, it's really become my preferred way to stay informed on breaking news. That's because it allows me to do it without all of that headline pushing and narrative spinning that you get elsewhere. So if you want to grab that 40% off the Vantage plan for unlimited access, you can use my link below, or you can use the QR code on the screen. Over the weekend, Tesla increased the size of its Robotaxi geofence in Austin to about 80 square miles. That was roughly 3 weeks after expanding it to 42 square miles, which was roughly 3 weeks after the initial launch that started with 20 square miles. So in roughly 1 month, Tesla has increased the size of the geofence in Austin by a 4x. And just so you know, I did plug the updated geofence into a website called Sketch and Calc just to double check, and that area does come out to roughly 80 to 85 square miles. Now at this point, I would not go as far as some people in saying the size of the geofence is irrelevant, but I will say at some point we need to start discussing the number of vehicles in the fleet. Which really should be obvious, because think about it, if Tesla were to say, you know what, we're going to cover the entire United States starting today, but we're only going to have 5 vehicles. And at that point, the question would be obvious, why expand if you're only going to have 5 vehicles? And listen, I'm not at all trying to say that's the situation we are in now. That's because Tesla is still building operations and learning to deal with interventions and edge cases with those remote monitors, and they may only have the bandwidth to monitor so many vehicles at a time. But despite this limitation, allowing that limited number of vehicles to cover a broader geography still has many benefits. It gathers more data and means higher population counts are in the active geofence, which will become critical once the program opens to the public. And shifting to the Bay Area, Holmars said again his only complaint is it was too hard to get a car. He said, "My naive suggestion is to let Tesla customers add their cars to the network and supervise FSD for passengers." But Elon replied to that saying, "One step at a time, safety is paramount." And on this point, Joe was talking about the big opportunity for the Robotaxi network and if they can end up connecting Austin and San Antonio. Those two cities are connected via I-35, and he said almost 6 million people live in that combined area. But it doesn't matter if there's 6 billion people, because if there's still only 12 vehicles active in the fleet, you can only service so many rides. And I'm hovering on this point because all I see on X these days is people dunking on Waymo and belittling its progress, and people taking every opportunity to paint Tesla in a better light. And sure, I've been guilty of this in the past, but I've also tried to make it a point to show respect to Waymo for paving the way and taking risks and pushing this thing forward, which has also paved the way for Tesla to roll its service out. And yes, the day will come when Tesla leaves Waymo in the dust by every metric imaginable. But in my opinion, we are not there yet. And just because Tesla has a bigger geofence in the Bay Area and close to, if not a bigger one in Austin, that does not tell the whole story. Until Tesla can start adding a meaningful number of vehicles to the fleet, until they can remove the safety monitor, many people will remain skeptical that it's going to happen soon. Now, many of you know, in my opinion, it's just a matter of time. All I'm trying to say is that time is not here yet. And here's the map comparison showing Tesla's new geofence compared to Waymo in Austin. For me, I still think Waymo has the bigger geofence, but there's a good chance before August is over, that narrative changes. Tesla Chan, who's still in Austin testing, said it's about 18 miles from the south end to the north end of the geofence, and the ride is about 1 hour. For that ride, the cost was about $20. And in his video, he said Tesla was showing a route to the destination outside of the geofenced area. I think most of you get this by now, but clearly not everybody does. If you're going to compare Tesla's Robotaxi service to Uber, make sure that comparison is using an Uber comfort quote, because you will never get a Model Y quality type vehicle at an Uber X rate. Chuck Cook shared this screenshot sharing an Uber X ride was $37. And then he shared the same ride in the Robotaxi app would have been just under $35. But no, this is not a direct Uber to Robotaxi comparison. All you need to know, Uber X is usually something like a Toyota Camry or a Honda Civic, and oftentimes they're older vehicles. For something to qualify as Uber Comfort, it has to be model year 2018 or later. There are legroom stipulations, and they have to have certain features like customizable temperature control, and overall a smoother, more premium feel. And this should be obvious because Tesla's Model Y are included in the Uber Comfort category. So if you want a real direct comparison, it's always going to be Uber Comfort to the Tesla Robotaxi service. In this situation, I'm just guessing, but an Uber Comfort might have been pushing $50 plus. And listen, I hope you guys know I'm not trying to cut anybody down or call anybody out. I'm really just trying to correct the narrative where I feel it's necessary. Because at the end of the day, I just want to be as accurate as possible. On that point, this post from Jeeves, Texas got a lot of traction. He said after September 1st, Tesla's Robotaxi can operate without a safety monitor if Tesla gets the Texas DMV permit, which is thanks to the new regulation SB 2807. But again, this lacks very important nuance and context. Now, yes, it's true. This new law does have an effective date of September 1st this year. However, when it comes to the actual adoption and the enforcement of the new rules, all the wording says is the Texas DMV must adopt the rules by December 1st, 2025, and then compliance is actually enforced 90 days after those rules take effect. Meaning, the Texas DMV is expecting to complete the system to actually implement these new rules and all of the programming by roughly April 2026, which would mean any applications from a company like Tesla might not be processed until that time. And there's still actually a public comment period on these proposed rules that's going to run through August 25th this year. And just so you know, this new bill has no proposed rules that require any mileage requirements or a number of hours of testing or any on-road data. Specifically, the way this will work, whenever Tesla applies for this permit, it's just going to be objective based on all of the data that Tesla has. And as long as Tesla meets certain requirements like proof of insurance and having an emergency plan in place, if accidents or instances arise, then Tesla should be good to go. So to make this clear, Tesla does not have to wait until spring of 2026 to operate without safety drivers if they don't want to. That's because compliance with the new requirements of the new bill, including the permits, is not required until the 90th day after the effective date of the rules. Again, the rules that have to be adopted by December 1st, 2025. So Tesla can continue operating under the existing rules, which would be before this SB 2807 law. And Tesla can operate under those existing rules until roughly spring of 2026. And that's if the rules are adopted on time. And the reason I'm sharing all of this is because under those previous rules, Texas already allowed automated vehicles to operate without a human operator present in the vehicle, as long as those requirements were met. They met the traffic laws, had recording devices, complied with federal standards, and had insurance. So, in summary, full enforcement of this new bill will not happen until the spring 2026, which means Tesla can go driverless without this permit as of now if they wanted to. But yes, it's true. Once Tesla is forced to comply with these new rules in the spring next year, by that time, Tesla would need the permit to remain safety monitor free, if indeed they decide to do that before that time. So that's why I'm correcting this post from Jeeves. Tesla could operate without a safety monitor today if they wanted to, without a permit. And further, Tesla could operate without a safety monitor after September 1st, even without a permit. Meaning Tesla doesn't need this permit to go without a safety monitor until sometime in the spring 2026. But I will say Jeeves was directionally right when it comes to what will be required of Tesla to get that permit. And the good news, Tesla should have no problem doing that. Meaning this new rule in Texas really should not have any impact on Tesla's Robotaxi service in Austin. Yes, eventually Tesla will have to apply to get this permit, but it should be a piece of cake. Chuck Cook shared this screenshot of his experience with the ride-hail service in San Francisco. His closest designated pickup spots were 10 minutes away. You can move the pin for a pickup, but it settles on the small circles that are black with white around them. You can drag the pin around on the map and designated pickup spots will appear, but he said unfortunately not very close to him at that time. Elon said Teslas can drive themselves, to which he was asked, when can I play video games in a Tesla, specifically a Cybertruck? To which Elon said probably 3 to 6 months, depending on regulatory approval in your city and state. And this scenario would certainly mean that is unsupervised FSD. So yes, I know that first statement is very exciting, potentially 3 to 6 months, but this depending on regulatory approval thing is a major buzzkill. It just means there is still a lot of uncertainty, and I would not be expecting any scenario like this to be widespread at any point in the next 3 to 6 months. Now, could there be a handful of states over the next 6 months where unsupervised FSD is a thing for customers? Sure, absolutely. I'm just saying I would not expect it to be available in a majority of states. Elon was also asked when Robotaxi in Chicago, to which Elon said, not sure what the status of Illinois is. A pretty good guide is that if Waymo is operating somewhere, then regulations allow Robotaxi in that city or state. Tesla will operate there as soon as we reaffirm safety testing in that locale and receive a license to operate, which is exactly what we've been saying the past few months. Wherever Waymo is operating and planning to operate, Tesla is likely going to follow its lead. So this is the list you'll want to remember. Waymo is currently operating in Phoenix, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Austin, and Atlanta. And the following is the list where Waymo has official plans to expand: Miami, Florida, Washington, D.C., Dallas, Texas, Las Vegas, Nevada, San Diego, California, Houston, Texas, Orlando, Florida, San Antonio, Texas, Boston, Massachusetts, Nashville, Tennessee, New Orleans, Louisiana, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New York City, Tokyo, Japan, Truckee, California, and Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Which is probably why Elon doesn't know what the status of Illinois is, because Waymo has not announced any testing or expansion plans there yet. And this matters because naturally Waymo is going to go where the fruit is hanging the lowest, which is why Tesla is going to follow suit. Alexander, who's been covering Tesla's supervised FSD closely in Sweden, said yesterday we learned Tesla has applied to test FSD in Uppsala and Södertälje, Sweden. So this may not be the 10x expansion of service area that Ashok was talking about on the Q2 call, but it's a 2x from the most recent expansion, and I'm pretty confident another geofence expansion will come in Austin before the end of August. The first supercharger location is officially open in Mumbai, India. I'm always a big fan of these commemorative posts. In this case, post number 1 has a special design and a plaque at the bottom, number 001. Also today, Tesla said it will be opening an experience center in New Delhi on August 11th. This coming shortly after Tesla opened the first one in Mumbai. Deliveries are expected to begin in India this quarter. And Tesla said both Mumbai and Delhi will each get 4 charging stations soon. It sounds like each supercharger site will have 4 posts for 16 posts total in each city, 32 across both Mumbai and Delhi. In a new Tesla stock note, Piper Sandler said Tesla investors should not overreact to the headlines around Tesla's autopilot-related jury verdict in Florida that we covered on Friday. They said, in our years covering Tesla, we've learned to ignore headlines related to autopilot liability. But most importantly, the firm believes Tesla will not likely be required to pay anything close to $243 million in damages. The firm added, this case does not have direct implications for Tesla's FSD rollout. Again, as we talked about on Friday, the car was actually running enhanced autopilot. And as we said, Tesla does plan to appeal that verdict, which means they don't expect to pay anything near that amount either. We have the Electronic Times reporting that Samsung will provide camera modules for Tesla's Optimus. This new supply arrangement would expand the strategic partnership between Tesla and Samsung. And yes, this comes just after we learned about the foundry deal that Tesla signed with Samsung for AI6, which by that time may also be the chip for Dojo. No other information or detail was shared, but if true, Samsung is quickly becoming a bigger and bigger part of Tesla's AI future. All I can tell you for now is that Samsung Electromechanics currently supplies camera modules to Tesla from its plants in South Korea. GM just said it hit another monthly record for US EV sales in July, led by the Chevy Equinox. GM sold more than 19,000 EVs during the month, up more than 115% year over year. And you know, I rarely cover 1 month data, but they said the Equinox EV led with more than 8,500 vehicles sold in July. That's not just the best US sales month ever for an Equinox EV, it's the best ever for a non-Tesla EV in the US. And I'm guessing a small percentage of you may remember, probably over a year ago now, I said I'm waiting for the time when somebody other than Tesla can sell more than 10,000 units of one electric model per month. Well, we've had to wait some time to even talk about that, but right now the Equinox is the closest to being that vehicle. Now, yes, we know some of this has to do with the EV tax credit going away at the end of September. So will this be sustainable for GM? And you throw on tariff implications. And I say that because the Equinox EV is made in Mexico. I wanted to give some credit to GM and Chevy where it's due because, hey, they're getting close to that 10,000 units per month number. And it may not be ongoing, but even if they could do it once, I would still consider that a win for them. And I saw Sawyer point this one out in a new SpaceX filing. They said up to 12 megapacks would be installed to support 48 megawatt hours of power generation. So add one more point to the list of Elon's companies working with each other. And we have Energy Storage News reporting that Georgia Power requests PSC permission to build and own 3 gigawatts of new battery storage projects. And PSC is just the Georgia Public Service Commission. They've been working on this project for over a year, and they said the goal was to assess and choose the most cost-effective and efficient proposals for dispatchable generation and storage resources. This to ensure construction timelines align with the projected winter capacity needs from 2029 to 2031. They said Georgia Power is seeking approval for 10 new battery storage facilities across the state with a combined capacity of over 3 gigawatts. And if you live in the area, you can pause the screen to see this list of the different locations and project sizing. And right here they say all of the company-owned proposal battery storage projects will use Tesla Megapacks, specifically the 4-hour duration variant. So this is obviously a massive order, and they said Georgia isn't merely adding megawatts, it's filling a genuine capacity gap with ready-to-build projects, an anchored supply chain, and a clear procurement schedule. Despite challenges of site selection and regulatory issues common in such a fast-moving market, battery storage projects that secure sites and equipment early position themselves to benefit from a unique and reduced risk growth opportunity in the Southeast emerging storage hotspot. So again, we're looking at over 3 gigawatts just for battery storage facilities and an additional 350 megawatts for solar plus battery storage facilities. And Georgia Power will own all of the projects, and all will use Tesla's Megapacks. If we take that 3.3 gigawatts and multiply that times 4-hour duration megapacks, that's about 13.2 gigawatt hours of storage capacity for all of these projects. We know each megapack is 4 megawatt hours, so 13,200 divided by 4 would be 3,300 Tesla megapacks needed to fulfill these projects. Multiply that by roughly $1 million per megapack, and that gives you a $3.3 billion order for Tesla Megapacks. At a 30% gross margin, this would be in the neighborhood of a $1 billion deal of gross profit for Tesla for these projects that'll be built in varying timelines over the next 5 years. And in the actual public filing, they said the Tesla Megapack is a utility-scale energy storage solution with a modular design that provides for rapid deployment of battery storage for high-capacity, large-scale projects. The company has focused on developing relationships with a leading supplier who stands behind operational guarantees to ensure successful project deployment for customers' benefit. And they also said the Megapack system is unique compared to other available battery storage in the market because it arrives at site fully integrated and capable of outputting 480 volts AC power. This integration greatly reduces commissioning timelines and allows the Megapack 2XL thermal system to operate prior to backfeed being available at the site. The Megapack is a modular design and includes multiple inverters per container, making the loss of one inverter negligible to the system's overall performance. And Sawyer did post about this, but if you're wondering the discrepancies between his numbers and mine, I just believe he may be leaving out the solar plus battery storage projects that, remember, would account for an additional 350 megawatts on top of that 3 gigawatt number. Some of you may recall in the past I've said any project over 1 gigawatt hour I would consider to be big. And this one is about 12 gigawatt hours, all of Tesla Megapacks. So yes, it's not clickbait. This truly is a massive order for Tesla Energy and a sign of things to come. Tesla stock closed the day at $309.26, up 2.19%, while the NDX was up 1.87%. The volume was 20% below the average. Don't forget, check out Ground News linked below for those interested if you want to grab that 40% off the Vantage plan for unlimited access. Hope you have a wonderful day. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.